Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast, which is all about living your life as a global citizen. And today we're going to kind of stay a little bit closer to home or closer to my home, which is in the United States. We're going to talk a little bit about Colonial Williamsburg. And in particular, we're going to talk about when is the best time to visit Colonial Williamsburg, because that's kind of a question that a lot of people ask. And they also want to know, too, is Colonial Williamsburg even worth visiting? Is it a place that you should visit? First of all, let me say, in my opinion, there is no bad time to visit Colonial Williamsburg. Yes, there are some times which the weather is better than other times, but there is really no bad time to visit Colonial Williamsburg. But those that are really concerned about the weather, some great times to visit is the autumn and spring are wonderful times. If you go into the autumn time, you should be able to see the trees turning colors, which really is beautiful. It's just a beautiful time to be able to visit. And April and May is also nice because all the flowers are starting to bloom, and it just feels like a great, beautiful springtime. June is also a good choice if you can't visit Colonial Williamsburg during those two times. Colonial Williamsburg is a site that is really worth visiting. And the other thing that a lot of people ask and say, look, if my time is short in the United States, is it worth visiting Colonial Williamsburg? And my answer to that is yes, it is. It's worth visiting, especially if you want to understand American colonial history. It's a great for history buffs, children, and families. When I went there to visit a couple times, it's just such a great place that you learn so much that you didn't know and understand about America, American history, and this time during American life. It's an important part of American history, as it was once the colonial capital of Virginia. Today, Colonial Williamsburg shows us the lives of the 18th century Americans as no other place does. It was founded as the capital of Virginia colony in 1699. It is also one of America's first planned cities, so you'll see that it's laid out in a straight and an orderly fashion. It also became a center for learning with the College of William and Mary, founded in 1693. The first hospital was established in America for treating mental illness in Williamsburg in 1773. General George Washington assembled his colonial army in Williamsburg in 1781. When you visit Williamsburg, you will walk into the 18th century life in America. Everything from the reenactments of the pivotal events in our history will take place to show you a bit about many of the early Americans and their way of life. One of the things that I really enjoy doing is you can get on a wagon, you can ride around town and see some of the sights of the town and kind of feel like you are living in this 18th or 17th century life like never before. You'll discover everything about the citizens' daily lives, like notable politicians and figures. You'll hear stories about the Native Americans and African Americans also during the time period. You'll even find Thomas Jefferson or Patrick Henry walking about on the streets so that you converse with them about American independence. So if it's a place that you really want to go to be able to understand more about America and what made America what it is today and what American history was like, this is really a great place to go visit and to be able to see and understand a bit about this American life. It's a great way to immerse yourself into the life of America during this period. It's actually the world's largest living history museum. It covers over 300 acres, where you can witness some of the tradespeople doing their work as they did in the 18th century. I have a friend whose husband was a Colonial Williamsburg gunsmith. He was a fantastic craftsman. He was able to make the old guns like they made back during this time. And because of people like him who still keep these crafts alive, you can go there and you can look and you can see how they used to do other things like this. And you'll be able to see a lot about life during this period. Colonial Williamsburg is open 365 days of the year, but most historical and trade sites are open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's even some evening programs that are going on. So even if the weather doesn't happen to be very good there, and even if it doesn't happen, if it happens to be really hot and sticky, it can get in Virginia during the summertime, and it can actually get a bit cold, even in the wintertime. In January, it can get kind of cool and in February, so even if it's a bit cool or cold, or even if it's in the summertime, it can be hot and it can be muggy or the humidity is quite high. it's still always a great time to go. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no time which is not a great time to visit Colonial Williamsburg, because there's so many great and wonderful things that you can see there when you go there to visit. For me, myself personally, my favorite site at Colonial Williamsburg was the Governor's Palace, the court, and the Capitol. There's so much you can learn by going to these places and by buying a ticket. Now, you can actually go to Colonial Williamsburg and just walk along the streets and not go into any of the buildings, because it is kind of like this living museum. Buying a ticket, to see all Colonial Williamsburg is really worth the expense. So I really recommend that if you're going to go there, that you buy a ticket, that you can go into the buildings, that you can see inside the buildings, and you can take the tours and be able to learn about everything inside these buildings and be able to learn about life as it was during this time period. And then also take the carriage ride or the wagon ride, around. It's a fun way to be able to see Colonial Williamsburg and be able to see how the 18 inhabitants saw it, how they lived their lives and how they saw it and what they did. It's really a beautiful historic town to explore. And, the Colonial Williamsburg Living Museum gives insight into the 18th century America like no other place at all. It really shows how the inhabitants lived during this time. So I am a great believer in Colonial Williamsburg. And if you're traveling, from someplace else to the United States, and you're thinking about, where do we want to travel in America? Yes, America is a vast and it is a huge country. And there's so many great things to see, of course, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, the West, the Rocky Mountains, the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone. There are so, many different things that you can see in America. Of course, L.A., Hollywood, Las Vegas. But really, if you are a history buff, if you want to learn more about American history, you want to be able to explore and understand more about what made America what it is today, and you want to be able to understand that, then I highly recommend that you consider to make Colonial Williamsburg a stop for you to be able to visit there. If you happen to go to a place like Washington, D.C., you can drive down there. And, you could probably see it depending on how much you want to see, you could see a lot of it in a day. So, it is worth the time and effort to get down there to see it. It's also a great drive if you have a car. It's a great drive to drive from Washington, D.C. down there to be able to see, this part of the United States and to be able to understand more about this. If you are a history buff, this is a place that you must see. This is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast, and where it's all about living your life as a global citizen. And we hope that you will all strive and seek to live your life as a global citizen. I am going to put a link to a blog that I've written about when is the best time to visit Colonial Williamsburg. You can see some of the pictures of Colonial Williamsburg and where I talk more about Colonial Williamsburg. And if you'd like to be able to explore more and understand more, I also have a list of the average temperatures during certain months of the year. So if you're thinking of when you're going to go or what type of clothing you need or what the weather may be like, then of course, this may be able to help you to be able to better plan your trip. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you, all of our listeners. We appreciate you being part of our community. We hope you'll give us a thumbs up, recommend us to your friends and others, and we just appreciate you being part of the Dusty Roads podcast. We'd like to thank our team who helps put this together, specifically Rico, and we'd like to just thank all of you.